Hello my friends, it is I, Dr. Jimmy, and today's t-shirt is this Harry Potter Diagon Alley opening t-shirt from when the thing opened back in 2014. Now, of course some people are still reeling over the news, which I had in my previous video, that Ash vs. Evil Dead is coming as a haunted house for Horror Nights in Orlando, and a haunted maze for Horror Nights in Hollywood. But that wasn't the only big news we had recently received, as I'd said, and so this video I'll cover a whole lot of information about Horror Nights that has recently been revealed, but not for Orlando and Hollywood, at least not to the end, but mainly in Asia. There are 4 Halloween Horror Nights events each year. At least for the past several years, there have been 4 separate events at 4 different Universal Studios theme parks, in addition to Universal Studios Florida and Universal Studios Hollywood here in the USA. Yes, we've also have Universal Studios Japan in the city of Osaka, and Universal Studios Singapore in the city-state of Singapore. And both of those have Horror Nights every year and have for the past several years. Now, on Wednesday, I guess technically since it's Sunday already, this is the 30th by the way, week before last, that is to say July 19th, the website for Universal Studios Japan Halloween Horror Night 2017 went live. It didn't give all the information that day. It did talk about the horror areas, or scare zones as we call them, and the 3 of the horror mazes, as they call the haunted houses or haunted mazes there in Japan, horror mazes. 3 of them, and only the 3 new ones. They like to repeat, do mazes over again year after year. So that's what they talked about first of all, but didn't give the rest of the information, which is unusual. They usually have the whole thing out at once. But then, earlier this past week, I think it was around Thursday or Wednesday or Thursday of this week, this past week, the one that just ended, we got the full thing. So now, on their website, they've got a full reveal, unlike Hollywood and Orlando. And Singapore, whose website went down. The one for Halloween Horror Night 6 just vanished, and they haven't got a new one yet. By this time last year, we did have stuff for Singapore, so it's very mysterious. They're a bit behind this year, but everyone seems to be behind this year. Anyway, as for Japan, they've got 5 mazes, as usual, 4 of their standard mazes and 1 extreme maze. And the horror mazes, as usual, feature a lot of IPs, especially American horror movie type IPs. However, one of them, the first one they announced, is entirely original. And that's rarity in Japan. They only had the first really original standard maze last year. It was called Tatari, and it was a J-horror maze. But this one, it seems to be a zombie-themed maze. When it first popped up back on the 19th, it was called Dead or Alive. And at first I thought it was an IP. I thought maybe they're doing something based on a Japanese video game, which has that name. There's also some Takashi Miike films called Dead or Alive, but they have to do with Yakuza, not so much zombies. And I wasn't familiar with the game. I sort of, I just assumed, oh yeah, it must be one of those survival horror games. But no, Dead or Alive game, it started out as a fighting game, and now it's got, like, bimbos in skimpy bikinis playing beach volleyball. Not exactly haunted house material. No, no, it wasn't meant to be that at all. It was an original maze with a zombie theme. By the way, the site is all in Japanese. I have some rudimentary skills in Japanese, as I lived in Japan for 7 years when I was a little boy. Actually was born there and lived there till I was 7 years old. But most of the writing I can't make out because it's in kanji, which are the Chinese characters, the kanji. I can read hiragana, I can read katakana, but I can't read kanji, except for some of the most basic kanjis, like, numbers 1 through 10, and, days of the week, and month and year, that kind of stuff, like certain important words, like, man and woman, that if you don't know, otoko and onna, then you might not go in the right toilet. So it's important to know what those are. That works not just in Japan, mind you, because the same characters are used in China and other parts of Asia. So you know which one to go into. But getting back to a lot of unisex toilets in Asia, then, actually, now that I think about it. But getting back to the what I was talking about, Dead or Alive, turns out totally original, and they changed the name of it. So when they did the bigger update, it now says Dead Man's Forest, and they say we changed the name to avoid confusion. Now, as I said, my Japanese reading skills are rudimentary, but there's this wonderful thing called Google Translate. Only problem with Google Translate is that sometimes it comes out a bit weird, because it's a direct, word-for-word translate, which isn't always the same as what it means. So sometimes you get some weird shit, and you think, what the fuck are they trying to say? So you have to be careful with that. But you can pretty much figure it out, at least I am. So and what's nifty about this is it's an outdoor maze. I think it's the first time they've done that. They've done scare area zone type stuff, but this is an outdoor maze. Kind of like the Jurassic Park Jungle of Doom or something they had back at Universal many years ago. That's an unusual thing to do the maze. They've had some outdoor mazes at Singapore in the early years too, now that I think about it, in the Sting Alley area. They had actual mazes rather than scare zones. It were actually mazes. The only problem with that is if you do that, rain. It's raining right now. The weather, inclement weather, can cause problems. Remember a haunted house at Universal in Florida a few years ago, back in 2007, the vampire bloodbath. They had scenes that were outside. You had to go through a little alleyway outside and go back into another building for the rest of the haunted house. And when it rained, everyone would just stop and they wouldn't go past that. And, it was like, come on, keep going. It's a conga line stoppage of the worst order, because no one wants to walk through the rain to get to the other part of the haunted house. It was funny. But let's get back to Japan. So, Dead Man's Forest, and it's a zombie-themed, apparently, haunted maze set in a haunted forest where there are zombies and other creatures, apparently, and it'll be an outdoor maze. A first, I think, for Universal Studios Japan. The other standard mazes, and there's 3 more of those, are based on American IPs. One is new and the other 2 are recurring, like they repeat mazes a lot. The new one is sort of new. It's Cult of Chucky. Cult of Chucky. They've had Chucky mazes for the past 3 years, but it's the same one they had for 3 years, called Chucky's Horror Factory. This one is a new Chucky maze. So it's a new maze, but it also features Chucky. So it's the 4th year in a row for Chucky, but now in a new maze called Cult of Chucky, based on the new film, which is going to be released direct-to-video in the United States, but I think overseas will be in cinemas. And the show will be released theatrically in Japan before the event begins. So it's set in a sanitarium, I believe. So that's that one. And then there's 2 recurring mazes. Nightmare on Elm Street, the Maze 3. That's the 3rd version of the same maze. Actually, it's the same maze for the last 2 years. This is the 3rd year in a row for that one. And a 2nd year in a row for The Exorcist, like they had last year. So those are the regular mazes. Then the upcharge maze is Trauma. Trauma is set in a haunted hospital. It's subtitled here. Again, this is Google translating Japanese to English, so it's kind of weird. Worst Containment Laboratory. Worst Containment Laboratory. I love that. I'm sure that when they have the English site, eventually they'll have an English site. They don't have it up yet. They'll change it a bit, make it sound a bit prettier to the English-speaking ear, or the English-listening ear. I suppose you don't speak with your ears. Ooh, that would be bizarre, wouldn't it? But oh my! But the Worst Containment Laboratory is. The past 2 years they've had Trauma. That's why it's Trauma 3, but it's not identical to the 2 previous Trauma extreme upcharge mazes. Like those, it is an extreme maze. They can grab you, they can touch you. I think they even tie you on a chair or something, restrain you, maybe blindfold you and smack you around. I don't know. What's the safe word? I do know that You have to sign a waiver, and no one under the age of 15 is allowed to go in. Plus, this is the cool part, this is the largest maze in Japan's history for Horror Nights. So this one's bigger than any of the previous, including the past two trauma mazes. So it's going to be the biggest maze they've ever built for Horror Nights in the past, gosh, well, they've been doing it consistently since 2011. I know a lot of people don't realize that. 2011, they did have a Horror Nights. People think it started in 2012. It actually started, they actually had it 1 year earlier. In 2011, they only had a scare zone with zombies. They didn't have any haunted mazes there. And they also had one back in 2002 that people don't know about too much, but you can look it up. You'll find out. They did have one back in 2002 with 2 haunted mazes. So there's been, technically this would be the 8th Horror Night for Japan in all the years that the park has been open. But getting back to trauma, it's bigger than the past 2 traumas that they had the past couple of years. It's the biggest one in the whole history of the park, and it should be very, very thrilling and exciting. I really wish I could get over there and check it out. All right, now those are the haunted mazes. The scare zones, horror areas this year will be once again the usual zombies. They've always featured massive amounts of zombies in the streets and different zombie areas throughout the whole park, pretty much. They have flash mob shows, the zombies dancing to Thriller. That will be back once more. But they will also have 20 different zombie outbreaks, at least, and they have different zombie characters. Some of these we've seen before, some we haven't. The standard regular zombies in the streets, of course, but there's also going to be themed zombies of various types. The big morbidly obese zombies coming back, and some of the other fat zombies, and they've added new fat zombies. So in addition to the gigantic morbidly obese zombie, which they've got this thing. If you were a little kid in Japan like I was, sometimes you get these little books of characters like superheroes for tokusatsu films, like Ultraman, Ultraman, yes, no, Captain Uratora, who was Captain Ultra, or some of those other characters, and the different monsters they had on their shows. You know, Kikaida, Kamen Rider, you know, the Go Ranger. You know the Go Ranger better as Power Rangers. It was 5 Rangers in Japan originally. It was called Go Ranger. There's also Rainbow Man. I love that one. That was great. I love that one very much. There's also a bunch of other things. There's that Kaiju list book, little book, and all the different creatures that Godzilla, Gojira, Musura, Ebira, all those guys that you might encounter, you know, in the movies or on television, these type of shows, little guides, little pictures, and who they are. Well, they came up with something like that on the website. It's a little zombie book. It's not a book, but it has all these little pictures. You click on the different pictures, and it comes up describing it, and you know, code 1, code 2, code 3 for each zombie type or a zombie character you can encounter. So you got the morbidly obese zombie, the big, huge, giant one they've had for the past few years. They're calling it Original Grand Fat. I love that. Again, something is lost in translation or gained in translation, I'm not sure. And then the 2 zombie hick brothers, like rednecks, and they're called Blonde Oscar and dark-haired Andre, or black-haired Andre. And then there's the sort of goth chick fat zombie that was last year. That one's come back. It's called Fat Lock. But they also added a zombie fat family. And these huge, morbidly obese, sort of like the Simpsons or somebody, with their mom, dad, and a son, and a zombie family of 3. So it's Nick is the dad, Amanda is the mum, and the boy's name is Bob. And he's like this kid with big glasses, and he's got chocolate all over his face. Big, huge, fat zombies. So a whole bunch of fat zombies, plus the regular size. The prisoner zombies in their orange suits. Those guys are running amok. They used to call them super zombies. They're intelligent. They use chainsaws and weapons. So we have 2 versions, Prisoner and Red. Red, I guess, are really bloody, disgusting, horrible, murderous. So those are coming back. The creepy little girl zombies back. The mother and her baby in the pram is back. And this time the baby's got a teddy bear that comes to life and goes after people, apparently, if what the Google Translate was accurate. and a lot of other creatures like that. They got some really freakish new ones in addition to those. Those have all been there before. The new zombies include clown zombies. In Japanese, in the katakana, it reads Piero Ansoni and Piero Ruku. Piero is from the French word Pierrot, which is a type of clown. But in Japan, it's come to be the generic word for clown. They took it from the French, and that's just what the Piero means, clown. So it's actually Clown Anthony and Clown Luke. And they're just two crazy, evil clown zombies. And one's like this big, fat zombie. Another one's on stilts. So they should be, like, you know, it's like 9-foot tall Pennywise as a zombie. It's like, shit. That's enough to drive people, you know, cause them to need diapers, I think. It looks rather horrifying. And there's these heavy metal zombie. Actually, it's a heavy meta. That's the way it was transliterated by Google Translate. And I'm not sure if they meant heavy metal or if they mean heavy meta. But anyway, she's got lots of piercings, whoever she is. And there's also these horrible freakish zombie. The first time it was brought up, it said Wamu zombie, which means worm zombie. Now it just says Bugzu, which means bugs. So the bugs zombie is covered with like maggots and also has what looks like a centipede crawling into his mouth and coming out of his eye socket. So he's got all kinds of vermin infesting his body. And then there's one called Split. Completely new and freakish, nothing to do with the movie. It's like a split personalities, literally. He's got one face on one side of his head, another face on the other side of his head, and these awful bone spur-like things sticking out in between. He's just this horrific, deformed mutant zombie with multiple body parts and probably more than 2 arms, because he's like fused together, or else somehow a zombie splitting apart. Mitosis, I have no idea. And then we've got what was the other one? Oh, I think those are the new ones. There was only coming out in the rain. And it's a really neat idea, because whenever it rains in a scare zone, they have to bring all the characters in, right? And then the streets are empty and wet. They decided they're going to have some special characters that will only come out on rainy nights. And so when there's rainy nights, then these pirate zombies come out. And like all the other zombies giving code numbers, code 1 through like 16 or 18 or whatever it was. But this one is listed as code rare, because you only see them in the rain. And so this pirate zombies, not just one, but a whole like fleet of them, you know, a whole bunch of sailors, pirate will come out in the rain and be stalking the parks on rainy nights. I guess that it looks like really neat makeup, but there must be some kind of waterproof makeup and costumes in order to deal with that, so it doesn't get ruined and to consider the safety of the people. It's kind of a risky thing. I don't think they'd ever dare do that here in Orlando for, you know, safety and all, but in Japan, different culture. So it seems, and you know, it's not like guests are going to run up and knock them down or anything, because it's not that sort of, not that kind of vibe in Japan. They can do a lot of stuff that would be very dangerous in America, because of guests would react in ways that in Japan, you know, they don't scream and knock you over and try to punch you in the face. No, they go like that when they get scared. So it's a very, and that's not you know, racist or anything. That's actual cultural meme. You scare a woman in America, she's or she might say, "Oh fuck, hell no," and start smacking you, or who knows what she might do. But most women in Japan, when they get frightened, they do this. It's like they're embarrassed to be frightened or something, so they laugh, but they have to cover their face and laugh, giggle. I know that seems weird, but I've seen it 1,000 times. It's a different culture. So yeah, but they like scary shit. I mean, they do. They just react to it differently. But it's cultural, you know. Anyway, so I think that's all the zombies, and that's what the streets are going to be like. But they also have the haunted attractions. They announced those this past week. Haunted attractions, again, will be Japanese IPs, will be overlaid into existing attractions. Sadako from the Ring, or Ringu franchise, the Japanese version of the Ring movie, the original Japanese version of the Ring movies. Sadako will be showing up in the Terminator 2 3D attraction again. If it's like the last time they did it before in that area, they've had her all over the park in different times for the past several years, but this time what they'll do is have her in the Terminator 2 attraction. If it's like the first time they did it in that attraction in 2013, You'll be going in just like you're going to see Terminator 2 3D show, and you sit in your chair and the show actually starts. You know, the usual moderator is there and the show's about to start, but then when the screen comes up, it's that really famous video, and it's what the fuck, and then all of a sudden there's the well, and she comes up out of the well and crawls toward the screen and comes through the screen, and she's right there in the theater with you to start cursing you. Oh yeah, they don't call them haunted attractions in Japan, they call them cursed attractions. So that's really fits. The other one this year will be Gakko no Kaidan, the haunted school. They had that a couple of years before. They're bringing it back again this year in the cinema, the 4D cinema theater. They show different things there at different times of the year. They had Godzilla earlier, a special Godzilla 4D presentation. I think right now is a Dragon Ball Z. I should say Dragon Ball Z with my fake British accent, but no one ever calls it that. You wouldn't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Z who? So Dragon Ball currently has a show in there right now, and there might even be another show there before the summer's out, before Halloween comes around, and that'll be the one they use for Horror Nights, is the Gakko no Kaidan, which is Haunted School. It's a franchise from the 80s and early 90s, I think mainly the 80s. So it's like, Japanese, people of a certain age, it's like nostalgic, like Friday the 13th might be for people, Oh yeah, those are really good horror movies we saw when we were kids. So that's going to be there again this year. And that's pretty much it. They have some special food items, like a curry bun that's shaped like Hello Kitty if Hello Kitty were Chucky. Yes, Hello Kitty as Chucky made into a bun with curry in it. And a frosted dessert drink that apparently talks, because it says I can talk, and I'm guessing maybe there's a button on it, and it's got a picture of Hello Kitty Chucky on it. So that has shown up on the site. And there'll be other, of course, daytime events. As always, Universal Surprise Halloween with parades and minion vampires and that kind of stuff during the day for younger people. No word yet on whether or not they're going to involve Harry Potter like they did last year with the Death Eater Schizo. So that was sort of outside of Horror Nights, yet it happened at the same time in the same park. So, it was sort of making Harry Potter for Horror Nights without making Harry Potter for Horror Nights, so that Joe Rowling won't get pissed, because she's the richest woman in the world and she has ways of coming after you with her powerful solicitors if you don't do it right. But I don't know what they're going to do, if they're going to have anything for Halloween and Harry Potter, the Wizarding World in Japan. This year we'll have to wait and see. There's currently a Dementor show going on right now every night anyway, which is pretty scary enough. That might be enough. They don't really need to do anything extra scary for Halloween, because they got Dementors swooping down, attacking guests, and actually killing characters, and Harry fights them off with his Patronus. And they come swooping down. They're a mixture of puppets and projections, all kinds of shit. It's pretty awesome. Find a YouTube video and watch it. It's pretty amazing. There's a Dementor show going on there. That's right now, not even for Halloween. And it's pretty scary from what I've seen. Maybe they'll bring that to the States, I hope. That looks pretty awesome. But again, different culture. You can get away with more shit in Japan, apparently. Let's see. I think that's about it. I haven't heard much else, but we'll have to wait and see if there's any new information over the next couple of weeks. They said they have all this new information by the end of July, which is now pretty much, so I guess that's it for Japan. Singapore has nothing yet except for one tantalizing clue. Just recently, an artist working on an upcoming television commercial for Halloween Horror Night 7 at Universal Studios Singapore released a photo of a prop that she had, I think it's a she, had designed for that. And so we know this prop will be used in the television commercial. And that's the only bit of information we have. We don't even know when it starts. Probably late September. Usually it's the last one to get going. Last year it was at the last weekend of September, like 2 weeks after it started in Orlando. The last weekend of September. It might be the same. They might push it up another weekend. We don't know what they're doing. There's nothing on the website yet. But this one image is a Qing Dynasty branding iron. So something from ancient China, from Qing Dynasty, and with a branding iron, and it had this big block on a branding iron, and on the block is a Chinese character, what Japanese call kanji, but it's a Chinese ideogram. And it's the same in different languages, although there's different, for example, in Japan, it kind of looks like this. In Japan, it would be hito, or san, or nin, different ways of saying the same symbol. It looks sort of like an inverted, it's like this, okay, or sometimes just like this, okay, but it's the same symbol. In Mandarin, it's ren, okay, and it means human being or person. So, obviously, they're branding people, not cows. So that's what it means. It's a branding iron, and it says person on it. So you brand a person with it for slavery, perhaps, or maybe something worse. Maybe, cannibalism. Just what is in that mugu gai pan? That's not pork. That's long pork. That's just speculation, because I don't know. That one branding iron picture is all we know. Has something to do with the event this year. It's going to be in the telly commercial, but we don't know if they have an icon. We assume that if they've had, most of the time they've done it for 6 previous years, and 5 out of 6 previous years they've had an icon. So chances are there'll be one this year, but we don't know anything yet. We'll have to wait. And again, last year, all the information about Singapore was out by the 27th of July. It's the 30th of July. We know nothing except that branding iron. So that could happen at any moment. Also, before I finish this video, breaking news! Yes, just minutes before I came on and did this video for you now. At 1:30 p.m. Pacific time, which is 4:30 p.m. Eastern time, and it went for at least an hour or so, ending up about 5:30, 5:45, almost 6 o'clock. It's a little past 6 now when I'm making this. John Murdy and Chris Williams, I think his name is, were at Midsummer Scream, a horror convention in California, talking about Halloween Horror Nights 2017 at Universal Studios Hollywood. They talked quite a bit about Ash vs. Evil Dead, confirming what I said in the previous video, that it's not based, it's many different scenes. Yeah, the cabin's going to be in there, but also Ash's childhood home will be in there, the trailer park that he was in. Those will all be scenes in the haunted house in haunted maze in Hollywood. And by the way, for people who thought it was going to be based on the movie, and they only just changed it to the TV series like recently, when somebody asked John Murdy that on Twitter the other night, has there been any changes? He said, no, this is the same maze that we've planned from the beginning. So that debunks that notion. There was no change. It was always the telly program from the moment they planned the haunted maze, sometime last December, I guess, whenever they got the IP to do it. So that's what it's always been, not Evil Dead 2. I mean, so he confirmed that, and he mentioned The Shining, the hello breakthrough, here's Johnny scene is going to be in it, and it shows like the axe breaking through the door. It shows how important the carpet is going to be, and Danny on his tricycle, the carpet, and it shows the bathroom from room 237, I think it is, whatever the number is. I may have got that wrong, the number exactly, but that's all being done. So he talked about those 2 mazes, of course, the ones already announced, The Shining especially, because they talked a bit about American Horror Story once before. So they talked about those 2. Then they brought out new news, never before seen, never before heard, about scare zones. So we now know a little bit about at least 2 scare zones that are going to be original scare zones at Horror Nights in Hollywood. He didn't say what the scare zones would be called. I don't think they made up the name for them yet. But he showed pictures of character designs, including horrible-looking pumpkin-faced, not necessarily masks, like pumpkin faces, horrible, big, like freakish pumpkin warrior with a chainsaw. 2 different 2 or 3 different chainsaw pumpkin designs, horrifying, and also a couple of creepy scarecrow chainsaw wielding. So we know the upper deck, as they call it, will feature chainsaw wielding pumpkin creatures and chainsaw wielding scarecrows. So perhaps the zone might be called Scarecrows, ending in a Z, or Pumpkins, ending in a Z, but maybe not. But that's something I was thinking about. And the other one in the tunnel, whatever they call it, the lower area they call the tunnel, it's going to be a gas outbreak with gas leaks and characters and gas masks and, aprons and containment and biological hazard suits. I don't know if there'll be mutated people from the gas. It sounds a bit like the containment scare zone we had at Universal, I think was that 2010 or something. But basically it's about an outbreak of toxic gas. There must be lots of fog in that zone to make it work, I think, and green lighting. Usually that makes it work. So we know at least 2 scare zones in the upper deck and the tunnel. I don't know if there are any other scare zones. And I don't know if he said anything about the Terror Tram or the other haunted mazes, because I couldn't find anything yet. Because people were there tweeting about everything John Murdy and Chris Williams were saying, and when they finished off, there was nothing else new. So at least we got some information about scare zones. So that's the latest breaking news from Hollywood. All right, so next time I do a video, unless there's new information, it'll probably be part 8 of my History of Halloween Horror Nights 25. Until then, have fun. I have to take off because tonight's great telly. There's Game of Thrones, there's Twin Peaks, and of course last week, tonight with John Oliver, except he has to go for like 4 weeks because he hasn't been on for a while. And God knows there's more than enough for him to talk about. So until next time, have fun, and I'll see you sometime in the rest of your life.